The US has created a bomber with capabilities that the world would never recover from, the B-21 Raider. This strategic bomber is not just a game changer, it has single-handedly redefined military strategies, making other nations alarmed. With its stealthy features, its unrefined lethality, and next-generation designs, this bomber made other technologically advanced nations like China and Russia terrified. Why is the world afraid of this strategic bomber? What makes this bomber different and better than China's Xi'an H-20 bomber? Join us as we unravel the mysteries behind the American first B-21 Raider that the whole world is afraid of. With a huge investment of $630 million, 7 years of undivided devotion towards creating a masterpiece, and over 25 years of dominance, the United States strategic bomber has sent chills to the heart of its adversaries. The B-20 Raider is one of a kind, and that's not all. It is designed with features that makes it unrivaled. Not even China's new Xi'an H-20 bomber can be compared to this technological marvel. Or can it? Let's get into their specifications. The B-21 Raider is a new bomber being made for the United States Air Force. This bomber was part of a program called Long Range Strike Bomber, with the aim to develop a strategic bomber with next-generation features that would replace the old bombers. It is designed with the ability to fly long distances for a long period of time and stay hidden from enemies. Stealthy features. It can also carry different types of weapons, including powerful ones like nuclear bombs or just regular bombs. The Raider marks a significant advancement in aircraft technology, being the world's first sixth-generation bomber, which is similar to the sixth-generation NGAD fighter, which is currently under development. The program began in 2011, and it started a fierce competition among aerospace giants Boeing, Lockheed Martin team, and Northrop Grumman. After 4 years of intense competition, Northrop Grumman, leveraging its extensive experience with stealth bombers from the B-2, secured the contract to develop the B-21. Their proposal stood out for offering the most cost-effective solution while meeting the Air Force's requirements. Cost considerations also played a very important role in the development of this bomber, which is a lesson learned from the exorbitant expenses associated with the B-2 program. The cost per unit aircraft of the B-2 was so high that it rivaled the GDPs of some nations. Therefore, ensuring cost efficiency while delivering the desired capabilities was a priority in the development of the B-21 Raider. To be more economical in the process of building it, Northrop Grumman had to eventually team up with about 400 suppliers across 40 states, all operating continuously for the past 7 years, even during the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. These suppliers are 7 of the world's most reputable companies as Tier 1 suppliers of the program, like jet engine manufacturer Pratt & Whitney, the largest defense contractor in Europe, BAE Systems, the world's largest first-tier aerostructures manufacturer, Spirit AeroSystems, Northrop Grumman's Orbital ATK, Rockwell Collins, GKN Aerospace, and Janicki Industries. All these companies, led by Northrop Grumman, worked together to create the B-21, a bomber that costs $630 million and that boasts next-generation capabilities. Compared to the B-2, the B-21 Raider is about 68% cheaper while being much more capable than the previously developed and even more expensive strategic bomber. Even though it benefits from over 2 decades of technological advancements, it's still an impressive military aircraft, deadly in its capabilities. The Air Force plans to get at least 100 B-21s, but they might go up to weigh 145 if the bomber passes its test without any hitch, almost literally. When it's put into service, the bomber will work alongside other strategic bombers like the B-52 Stratofortress, the B-1 Lancer, and the B-2 Spirit initially. Eventually, it will replace both of them, marking the end of their era or perhaps its continuation in a different form. In any case, the U.S. will have a bomber that can demonstrate the strength of its military across the globe, with the operational range of a ship and the firepower of modern nuclear weapons. The development of this strategic bomber with unrivaled capabilities has deeply troubled China, the United States being their #1 rival. Their next move in the bomber race might involve their new Xi'an H-20 bomber, and they're probably aware of the challenge that it would take in developing one. Interestingly, the news of the development of China's strategic bomber became public around the same time as those of the United States. However, to understand how capable the H-20 is, and if it can in any way be compared to the B-21, these bombers would need to compete directly by comparing the three most important factors in any bomber: stealth, avionics, and armament. Similar to its predecessor, especially the B-51, the B-21 will most definitely be designed from the start to be a stealthy plane, using what they have learned from the process of making the hard-to spot. It will have special features like edges that line up, panels on the skin that look like jagged teeth, and the engines will be hidden with special matte skin. Its shape will be like a big wing, which helps make it hard to detect by radar. Just like the B-2, it will probably be painted with a special paint that makes it hard to see during the day and avoid being spotted. Its underside will be painted dark because it flies really high, over 50,000 feet up. When it's that high, a dark color makes it blend in with the sky better. The B-21 will also have a sensor that looks up at the sky and tells the pilot to go higher or lower to match the brightness of the sky, so it's always hard to spot. To keep these stealth features working well, the B-21 might need to be kept in special hangars that have air conditioning, and that would definitely cost a lot of money to build and maintain. To make it better than previously developed bombers, it will have lots of new and high-tech avionics systems all working together. These include things like a special radar that can do many things, a digital navigation system that uses radar and GPS to help the plane fly, and a system that uses space objects to help figure out where it is. It also has a radar that can scan in different directions, a system to jam enemy communications, and cameras and sensors to spot targets. Communication is very important, and the B-21 prioritized this. This new strategic bomber can talk to other planes and ground forces using special links, and it has a system that warns the crew about dangers and can change its route to avoid them. The importance of this feature cannot be overstated because not only does it help to keep the pilot aware of his environment and potential threats, it makes it possible to avert danger, keeping both the pilot and the aircraft safe from any sort of damage. Also, for the military, this system makes the bomber really important because it's like a central hub for getting and sharing information, making it better at managing battles. To make sure everything is working okay, there's a system that checks all the avionics all the time. Now to its carrying capacity, like the aircraft before it, the B-21 should be able to carry more than 30,000 pounds of weapons, including nuclear bombs like the B-61 and long-range missiles. It can also carry regular bombs and other modern weapons, like missiles that can hit ships from far away. This makes it perfect for fighting ships in places like the South China Sea. Unfortunately for aviation lovers and people rooting for the Raider, several information concerning this bomber has been kept secret because it's a special program and also for security purposes. Details regarding how far it goes, what kind of weapons it carries, or how big it is compared to its predecessor have been undisclosed. However, some photos of the aircraft were released in December 2022 during a ceremony at Northrop Grumman's factory in California, and observers with keen eyes were able to spot a thing or two, but these are just speculations. The Raider will be maintained at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma, while testing and evaluation will happen at Edwards Air Force Base in California. It will fly from bases like Dyess Air Force Base in Texas, Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, and Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. Ellsworth was chosen to be the first base for the B-21. There was talk about using a drone alongside the B-21, but that idea was dropped because the idea was to save money, and that thought would not help with the cause. The Air Force is also planning to get a new fighter jet to protect the new bomber during missions into enemy territory. The Air Force wants to update its bomber fleet and most of its nuclear weapons for operations in the Indo-Pacific, especially concerning China. Now let's talk a bit about the B-21's predecessors, the Stratofortress. The B-52 was a lot like the B-47 Stratojet bomber that came before it in terms of technology. They both had similar designs like wings that angled back and engines in pods. The inside of the plane also had seats that could eject if there was an emergency. In the B-52D, the pilots and the person in charge of electronic countermeasures would eject upwards, while the crew below would eject downwards. In earlier B-52 models, the person who operated the tailgun had to get rid of the gun before ejecting. In the first B-52s, the tail gunner sat at the back of the plane and used both visual and radar systems to aim the gun. In later models, the tail gunner moved to the front of the plane, and they only used radar to aim, similar to how the B-58 Hustler's tail gun worked. Because of how this bomber is meant to fly, it doesn't need to do big turns or recover from spins. It has a small rudder that can only turn the plane a little bit to the side. They originally planned to use a different kind of tail that moves all the way, but they changed their minds because they weren't sure if it would work well. Since the plane has 8 engines, if one of them stops working, it won't cause too much of a problem because the rudder can fix it. To help the aircraft land and take off when it's windy, the main landing gear can move to the side a bit. Before the plane takes off, the crew sets this up based on how windy it is. The part of the plane that controls going up and down is also small, like the rudder, so it can't move the plane a lot. To help with small changes, there's a part at the back called a stabilizer that moves up and down a little when taking off and landing, because the flaps on the wings make big changes in how the plane tilts. The B-21 would be built in such a way that it would experience no limitations in the way it flies. Also, the B-52s before the G models had small things on the wings called ailerons that helped it turn. Because the wings are thin, they can't use regular ailerons, so they used something called spoilerons instead. These were better for controlling the plane, especially when it was being refueled in the air. But the later models got rid of the ailerons and just used more spoilerons. Because of this change, those models could wobble more when flying. This bomber got upgraded in the 1970s, and these upgrades enabled it to carry up to 20 nuclear missiles and air-launched cruise missiles. They chose the Boeing AGM-86B missile for it, fitting 194 planes to carry them, and some planes had a special launcher for them. They also made some changes to the planes so satellites could recognize them easily. If the B-52 is this heavily armed and can carry that much nuclear weapons, just imagine how formidable the new B-21 Raider would be. Later, they made more changes to the Stratofortress that were not designed to carry missiles to make them better at dropping regular bombs. They also added new systems to manage bombs and made pylons under the wings to carry bigger bombs. Some planes were even fitted to carry anti-ship missiles and other special bombs. In 2016, Boeing started updating them so that they can carry smart bombs inside the plane instead of just on the wings. Even though the B-1 bomber can carry more weight than the B-52, it rarely carries its full load. Its biggest load is the AGM-86B missiles, while the B-1 can carry more types of bombs, but fewer of each. Despite the plan to replace the Stratofortress in the future, the bomber will get new hypersonic missiles and nuclear-armed cruise missiles, making it more formidable and somewhat irreplaceable. This means that if the B-21 would definitely be a beast, a force to reckon with. In terms of propelling system, the B-52 bomber has 8 engines arranged in pods and held up by 4 pylons under the wings. These pylons also help the wings fly better. The first prototypes used experimental Pratt and Whitney YJ57P3 turbojet engines. The early B-52 LH models had Pratt & Whitney J57P1W turbojets with 10,000 pounds of thrust, which could go up to 11,000 pounds with water injection. Water for this was stored in a tank in the back of the plane. One thing is certain, the engine for the B-21 Raider would definitely be from the jet engine manufacturer Pratt & Whitney. Let's check out the Raider's competitor, China's Xi'an H-20. The H-20, also known as Hong-2, is a planned stealth bomber that is being designed for China's Air Force. It is a big project for the Chinese military because this would be their first bomber that is designed specifically for strategic purposes. This technologically advanced nation announced plans for this bomber in September 2016 by a Chinese Air Force general, Ma Xiaoshan, who disclosed to the public that China was working on a new long-range bomber. To help the public keep tabs of the development process, a military spokesperson confirmed that the development was going well. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, the H-20 will likely be a flying wing with a range of at least 8,500 kilometers and can carry at least 10 tons of weapons. This could pose a threat to United States military bases in Guam and Hawaii. The plane is expected to carry either conventional or nuclear weapons. Over the years, various models and computer images of the H-2 have appeared online, showing features like serrated air intakes and special tail surfaces. Chinese state media hinted that this bomber might have its first flight soon in July 2022. The H-20, a Chinese bomber, is expected to carry at least 22,000 pounds of weapons, which could threaten U.S. targets as far as Hawaii. We don't know much about the H-20 yet because it's a secret, but based on what we know, the B-21 has an advantage. In March 2024, a vice commander of the Chinese Air Force mentioned that the H-20 would be revealed very soon during a National Congress session. While many design and performance details are unknown, China's subsonic bomber will have an estimated operational range between 5,000 and 6,000 nautical miles, or 8,500 to 10,000 kilometers. The aircraft is aimed at bombing missions in the second island chain and in the Western Pacific. With in-flight refueling capability, its range could be increased well beyond the Pacific region. The aircraft will also be capable of carrying conventional armaments and nuclear munitions in its internal and external bays. While this information is not enough to compare these two bombers, let's have a look at one of China's finest bombers, the Xi'an H-6. The Xi'an H-6 is a bomber aircraft used by the Chinese Air Force. It's based on a Russian plane called the Tupolev Tu-16. China started getting these planes in 1958, and they made a deal with Russia to build them in China. By November 2020, China had as many as 231 of these planes, and they're still making more. The newest version of the H-6 is called the H-6N. It's been changed a lot and can now refuel in the air and carry missiles that can be launched from the air. According to the United States Department of Defense, this will let the Chinese Air Force attack faraway targets with really accurate weapons. The Tupolev Tu-16, first used by the Soviet Union on April 1952, was among their earliest successful jet bombers. Over 1,500 were made by 1962. In the early 1956, the Soviet Union agreed to let China build Tu-16s too. They sent China 2 planes, parts, and materials to get started. Soviet experts helped China start making the planes in 1959. China chose the Harbin and Xi'an factories to build the Tu-16s. They had to make big changes and expansions to the factories. The first Chinese-made Tu-16 was finished in just 67 days in 1959. Then in 1961, they decided to focus on making them in Xi'an instead. The first fully Chinese-made H-6 bomber flew in 1968. But there were problems along the way. The Cultural Revolution caused delays, and they even lost some important plans during that time. The H-6 was used to test 9 nuclear bombs at the Lopner site. But as missile technology got better, the importance of using planes to drop nuclear bombs went down. By 1972, it was mainly used for regular bombing, not nuclear missions. If the H-20 is anything or even better than the H-6, the United States might just have something to worry about. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.